Ambassador Greer, well, thank you for being here today. I know there's been a lot of discussion about tariffs, but would you just briefly discuss non-tariff barriers to trade? In other words, the barriers that countries put up to deny market access from U.S. exports into those countries that aren't tariffs per se.
Yes, thank you, Senator. I have here in my hand a book that's become very popular in recent days. This is the National Trade Estimate on Foreign Trade Barriers, and the Office of the United States Trade Representative puts this together with input from civil society, unions, industry, business, small business, and this is 400 pages of all the non-tariff barriers that you're talking about. Just a few examples. India, huge trading partner, they restrict imports of ethanol for fuel use by using restrictive import licenses. These are the types of border measures that don't sound very sexy to talk about, and they don't make for a great soundbite, but these are the things that actually block our exports, where they have licensing regimes or they have fake science that they use to block our imports.
Lynn, just one example that seems to me to make the point is that our friends in Australia basically have put up barriers to the export of beef from the United States. My state, Texas, happens to produce a lot of beef cattle, and Australia basically denies access to its huge market, but not as a result of tariffs so much as non-tariff barriers to trade. Could you speak to that?
Yes, Senator, and it's always surprising because we have a free trade agreement with Australia, and we would expect that we would have fair and reciprocal trade. Last year, I think we imported about $3 billion worth of Australian beef, and we exported $0 of American beef to Australia. And it's not just beef. Australia also blocks on specious, fake science grounds, the export of fresh and frozen U.S. pork. So it's incredible that they do this. We have zero exports of the fresh and frozen U.S. pork to Australia.
I find it interesting that people express surprise at President Trump's policies when he's been talking about these policies for, best I can tell, for decades, and how unfair trading arrangements are between various countries. And indeed, some of these unfair trading practices have resulted in the deindustrialization of America. We've exported manufacturing to Asia, and particularly China and other countries, that now appear to be willing to hold us hostage to those supply chains. A few years ago, we passed the Chips and Science Act. We worked with Secretary Pompeo, Secretary Ross during President Trump's first administration, and later was signed by President Biden, but to bring advanced semiconductor manufacturing back on shore, because we recognized that the vulnerability that existed, if there was another pandemic, there's a natural disaster, or heaven forbid, a military conflict break out in Asia, we wouldn't have access to these advanced semiconductors that run everything from your cell phone to the avionics on an F-35 Joint Strike Fighter. But China has basically held us hostage and continues to use some of these vulnerabilities to our detriment. For example, critical mineral processing. Would you speak to the vulnerability that exists as a result of China basically processing 90% of the critical minerals in the world that are essential for our daily lives?
Yes, Senator, and that figure is always one that gives me great concern, the 90% of the processing. We do have critical minerals in the United States. We have lithium here. We have other critical minerals here. And a lot of it is that China has centralized the processing of minerals, right? We have in the Western Hemisphere, in Bolivia, in Chile, we have all kinds of critical minerals, and that's in our hemisphere. But they get sent to China, they're processed, and they come here, and then if China wants to exercise economic coercion or other practices, they do have a stranglehold on these kinds of things. That's a very dangerous situation to be in. I mean, this is part of the urgency of what we're talking about. And I think as the Trump administration certainly takes action on trade, but also takes action on the environmental side and permitting and regulation, that's an area where we can actually have more of that activity here in the United States, or we can work with our trading partners to try to incentivize production there as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Senator Bennett.
Chair,